The black Bentley slid through downtown Manhattan like a whisper, tinted windows, heated leather seats, the faint scent of Chanel No. 5 hanging in the air between them like a promise. Daniel Hargrove had built his life the way architects build skylines, deliberately, precisely, with no room left for accidents or sentiment. $40 million in managed assets. A penthouse on the Upper East Side with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Central Park like the city itself was something he owned. And sitting beside him, one hand resting lightly on his arm, was Vivian Ashworth, polished, composed, already deep in conversation with her wedding planner through a single wireless earbud, casually discussing floral arrangements for a ceremony in the Hamptons as though the rest of the world were simply background noise. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October. The sky above Fifth Avenue was the pale, washed-out blue of early winter, and the city moved the way it always did, fast, indifferent, relentless. Taxis cutting lanes. Pedestrians flooding crosswalks the moment the signal changed. Steam rising from grates in the sidewalk like the street itself was breathing. Daniel had driven this route 100 times. He knew every block, every light, every corner. He was not the kind of man who got surprised. And then the light turned red at 57th Street. He eased the Bentley to a stop, one hand loose on the wheel, eyes drifting forward out of habit. A food cart on the corner. A courier weaving between stopped cars on a bicycle. A woman in a worn gray coat standing at the edge of the crosswalk with two small children, both of them identical, both barely tall enough to reach her hip, holding her hands on either side like small anchors keeping her steady in the current of the city. Daniel almost looked away. Almost. Something made him look again. Something quiet and instinctive, the way you sometimes hear your own name spoken in a crowded room before you consciously register the sound. His eyes moved back to the woman. Gray coat, dark hair pulled back simply, no jewelry, no pretense. She was crouching down in front of one of the children, fixing the collar of his little jacket with the focused tenderness of someone for whom that small act was the most important thing in the world at that exact moment. Then she laughed softly at something the boy said, a real laugh, unguarded, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine, and the sound didn't reach him through the glass but he felt it anyway, the way you feel a frequency more than you hear it. He knew that laugh. He had heard it in the dark of a studio apartment on the Lower East Side, 4 years ago, when neither of them had anything and it hadn't mattered at all. He had heard it across a kitchen table over bad coffee and good conversation. He had heard it in the last voicemail she ever left him, 3 years ago, which he had listened to once and then deleted because deleting it felt easier than whatever the alternative was. Mara. Her name moved through him like cold water. His hand tightened on the steering wheel. He wasn't aware of it happening until he noticed his knuckles had gone white. She still hadn't looked up. She was standing again now, one twin on her hip, the other pressing close against her leg, and she was pointing at something across the street, a bakery window, maybe, or a display of something bright, and the child on her hip was craning his neck to see, one small hand pressed flat against her cheek for balance. The gesture was so ordinary and so full of love that something in Daniel's chest contracted sharply, like a muscle that had been still for too long suddenly forced to move. He noticed the children's eyes. Even from this distance, through glass, in the pale afternoon light, dark brown, almost black, deep set, with that particular quality of stillness that people who knew Daniel always remarked on. His eyes. The thought arrived not as a suspicion but as a recognition, quiet and absolute, the way you recognize a place you've never been but somehow already know. His breath left his body slowly. His mind went completely, unnaturally still, the first silence he had felt in years of noise and motion and forward momentum and carefully constructed distance from everything that had once mattered to him. Vivian was saying something. Her voice floated at the edge of his awareness, warm and unhurried, something about centerpieces, something about the guest list. And then Mara looked up. Her eyes found the Bentley, found him, through the windshield, across the width of Fifth Avenue, through 3 years of silence and every unspoken word that lived inside it. And the ground beneath Daniel Hargrove's perfectly constructed life shifted in a way that no amount of money would ever be able to fix. He didn't move when the light turned green. Behind him, a cab honked once, sharp and impatient, the way only New York cabs honk, as though the driver had been personally insulted. Daniel didn't hear it. Or rather, he heard it the way you hear rain when you're already standing in it, present but irrelevant, background to something so much larger that everything else simply stopped mattering. Mara's eyes were still on him. She hadn't moved either. The twin on her hip had turned his small face toward the street now, following whatever his mother was looking at with the pure, unfiltered curiosity of a child who hasn't yet learned to pretend he isn't watching. The other boy had pressed closer against her leg, one fist wrapped in the hem of her coat. Both of them steady. Both of them completely, instinctively anchored to her, the way children are anchored to the one person in the world who has never once let them fall. Daniel. Vivian's voice cut through finally, not loud, but precise, the way a key turns in a lock. The light is green. He didn't answer. The cab behind him honked again, longer this time. Then a second car joined in. The ordinary machinery of the city demanding he move forward, the way the city always demanded, no pauses, no hesitation, no standing still in the middle of Fifth Avenue because a pair of dark eyes had just looked through your windshield and undone 3 years of careful, deliberate forgetting. Daniel. Vivian touched his arm. Her fingers were perfectly manicured, cool even through the fabric of his jacket. What is happening? Drive. Give me a second, he said. His voice came out quieter than he intended. Quieter and rougher, like something that had been stored in a place with no air. He watched Mara blink. Watched her absorb the fact of him, the Bentley, the woman in the passenger seat visible even through tinted glass, the whole immaculate architecture of the life he had built in the years since he had stopped returning her calls. He watched her process it not with devastation, not with fury, but with a composure so complete it was almost more difficult to witness than tears would have been. She straightened slightly. Adjusted the child on her hip with a small, practiced shift of her weight. And then, with the quiet precision of someone who had already decided long ago that she would never again wait for anyone to choose her, she looked away. She took the other boy's hand. She stepped off the curb. She started walking across the intersection, moving with the crossing signal, head forward, pace steady, as though she had simply glanced at a passing car and found nothing there worth stopping for. Daniel pulled over. He did it without thinking, without announcing it, without a plan, which was not how Daniel Hargrove operated under any normal circumstances. He was a man who had built a career on calculation, on reading rooms, on never making a move without understanding exactly where it would land. But his hand was already signaling, already guiding the Bentley to the curb in front of a wine shop with a burgundy awning, and he was already reaching for the door handle before any coherent thought had formed to explain why. "Excuse me." Vivian's voice carried a new quality now, not irritation, not yet, but the early architecture of it, the careful precision of a woman who was beginning to understand that something was happening that she had not been briefed on. "Daniel, what are you doing? We have a reservation at 7 and I still need to get back to." "I'll be 2 minutes," he said. He stepped out of the car. The October air hit him immediately, colder than he expected, carrying that particular Manhattan bite that arrived sometime in late autumn and didn't leave until April. He stood on the sidewalk for 1 second, orienting himself, scanning the crosswalk. Mara had reached the other side. She was moving south along the avenue now, the twins walking on either side of her, her coat shifting around her legs in the wind. She hadn't looked back. He followed. He was aware of how it looked, a man in a $12,000 overcoat stepping around pedestrians on Fifth Avenue with the focused, slightly desperate energy of someone chasing something he couldn't name and couldn't explain. He was also aware that he didn't care, which was itself remarkable. Daniel had spent the better part of a decade caring enormously about how things looked. It was practically a professional skill. Mara. He said her name at a normal volume but it reached her. He knew it would. Some part of him had always known exactly how to reach her, even when he had chosen not to. She stopped walking. She didn't turn around immediately. She stood with her back to him, one hand holding each boy, her shoulders carrying that particular stillness of a person who is taking exactly as much time as they need before they decide how to face something. The twins looked back at him with open, uncomplicated curiosity, two identical pairs of dark eyes studying him the way small children study strangers, without judgment, without history, with nothing but the simple present-tense question of who this person was and what he wanted. Daniel looked at those eyes and felt the last of his composure begin, very quietly, to come apart. Because standing on a cold sidewalk on Fifth Avenue, looking at two small boys who carried his face in theirs with no knowledge of what that meant, Daniel understood something that no board meeting, no acquisition, no perfectly engineered future had ever managed to teach him. That there were certain moments in a life, not many, but a few, where everything you had chosen and everything you had avoided and everything you had told yourself was necessary stood in front of you all at once, patient and quiet and utterly without mercy. This was one of those moments. And it had been waiting for him, with extraordinary stillness, for exactly 2 years, 7 months, and 14 days. Mara turned around.